Welcome to Haxby Shed. I've already made a video about my Elliott 10M shaper arriving, but I haven't really said anything about the bit of refurbishment that I did. Although it was scruffy, the machine was actually in quite good order when I got it, but there were three specific faults which I'll explain now. The first was there was a keep strip missing from the table at the bottom. The second was the shaper was fitted with a large electrical switch box where that emergency stop is now, and the switch box was so large that it wasn't possible to move the table feed to the vertical up-down position. The operating rod would foul on the switch box. And the third problem was that the pulley on the motor was loose. So for each of those, I'll include some pictures of the work I did to fix those problems. This was the switch box. You can just see how big it is. And it was fitted here, which meant that this lever fouled this corner when this was fitted onto this shaft, when the ratchet was fitted onto this shaft, which drives the up and down mechanism for the table. So you have to wonder, I think this shaper dates to 1963, and it's probable that this was fitted from the beginning. So you wonder if, for the whole of the shaper's life, until I got it, that it was never possible to move this ratchet mechanism to the vertical feed. Don't know, I just wonder. So what I did was I made a temporary change and I shifted the box over further this way, over to here, temporarily to give me a bit of clearance to operate both feeds, until I could fit an inverter, and I've made a video separately about fitting an inverter. I mentioned that there was a keep strip missing from the table, and actually it was this one, this back keep strip. So I ordered up a bit of steel from eBay, cut to size already, the right size, and fitted that. And this pulley was loose, and you can potentially, yes you can see the marking here, and what was happening was the pulley was working its way off the shaft as it was running, of course rubbing on here and clattering away. So I pushed the pulley back on. There was a key visible at the time here, and there was nothing I could do to stop it working loose. The motor shaft had been worn so much by this pulley over the years, so you have to again imagine that it had been like that for years and years. And actually to fix it, what I had to do was to drill for a second grub screw. I pressed a bush into the end of this pulley, drilled a hole through, tapped this hole so it screws into the motor shaft, and put Loctite on it. And through those steps I managed to get it to secure. But as I say, it must have been like that for years. Various bits were stuck when I got it, but in particular this was stuck, so even when I unscrewed this Allen grub screw here, I couldn't turn this separately to set it, but with a little bit of work I got all that freed off. At the back just above the motor, there are 4 of these rotating caps which allow you to provide an oil feed to the bearings internally, and a couple of those had seized up, so I freed those up, but then I oiled them and the oil flow was fine to the bearings. Here I'm going to show you a slightly curious thing. You can see that the side of this casting and the side of this casting are not properly lined up. It seems as if this is canted over slightly this way, and if I was to film at the other side, the opposite is true. As if this and this hadn't been machined together. And in fact, originally from the factory, the shape was green, and underneath this grey I can tell it's green. But this was grey, originally grey. And it's possible that somehow this component got broken and was replaced with a grey one. Now, the front slide moves up and down perfectly vertically. I've checked it with a dial gauge. So the machine operates accurately, but it's just slightly irritating to me to see that these are slightly out of line. Here you can see it from the front. So this back casting doesn't quite line up with this. It's angled. This appears to be angled over to my left now, but it all cuts accurately. It's just the perfectionist in me, I think. I made a modification here. You can see the oil hole, which is to oil the pivot pin. But actually the pivot pin itself was blanking the hole off. When I put oil into that little cup reservoir, it didn't go anywhere because it couldn't run out because the pin itself was blocking it. So I just used a hacksaw blade to cut a couple of small channels at the bottom of that hole so that the oil then could run out to the sides where the pin rotates. The shaper has a number of these ball oilers, or ball bearings, sitting in a cup, but it's a little bit difficult to get the oil into these sometimes. So I took this casing off to make certain that the oil was getting down to the bull wheel main bearing. I checked the main pivot sliding block here and everything was fine. I made these brass and copper fittings for the screen cable to take it round a tight bend and to protect it, but I think they also look smart. I toyed with the idea of painting them but decided to leave them natural colour. Another small improvement I made was to fit wipers. So I made these plates from a bit of sheet steel. I added drilled and countersunk holes at both sides here so that I could secure the clapper box when I wanted to do keyway cutting and I didn't want the clapper box to clap. Perhaps just one more thing to mention. This vertical slide is wound down to apply the cut, but it needs to be locked after the cut is applied because backlash in the thread can cause the tool to drop slightly lower or grab or even raise up. So I put a T-bar, I welded a T-bar onto a screw here so that I could lock it easily each time I made an adjustment. As it arrived with me, there was an Allen grub screw in there, and it's a bit fiddly, of course, to lock that every time with an Allen key. So I simply welded on a T-bar to a longer screw. And then when I'd got through all the cleaning and the repairs and adjustments, eventually I scraped off the flaking filler and filled that in with an epoxy filler. rubbed down the fillet and painted it from the drip tray upwards. I didn't bother with the base. I hope you feel that's comprehensive coverage of renovating the Shaper. Thank you for watching Haxby Shed.